He was the most feared man on the high seas, a pirate who didn't just want your gold, he wanted your soul. With smoking fuses in his beard and a reputation for cold-blooded cruelty, Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, turned himself into a living nightmare to paralyze his enemies with fear. Today, we're diving into the top 10 terrifying facts about Blackbeard that prove he was more monster than man. Most pirates were thieves, but Blackbeard was a master of psychological warfare. He understood that if people were terrified of you, they would surrender without a fight. He cultivated an image of a demonic entity, someone who had crawled out of the depths of hell to claim the ocean. But behind the smoke and the legends was a man capable of acts so dark they still haunt maritime history. Here are 10 facts that reveal the true terror of Blackbeard. 1. He used slow-burning fuses to look like a demon. Blackbeard's most famous trick was also his most terrifying. Before boarding an enemy ship, he would tuck slow-burning hemp fuses, dipped in saltpeter and lime water, under his hat and into his thick black beard. When he stepped through the smoke of the cannons, his face would be wreathed in a thick, sulphurous cloud, his eyes glowing through the haze. To a superstitious 18th-century sailor, he didn't look like a pirate. He looked like a literal demon rising from the underworld. 2. He carried 6 loaded pistols into every battle. While most men carried 1 or 2 weapons, Blackbeard was a walking arsenal. He wore a custom-made silk sling across his chest that held 6 primed and loaded pistols. Along with a massive cutlass and several daggers, he was prepared to kill multiple men in seconds without ever having to reload. He was a one-man army, and the sight of him bristling with weaponry was often enough to make entire crews drop their swords in terror. 3. He once held an entire city hostage for a chest of medicine. In 1718, Blackbeard didn't just rob a ship, he blockaded the entire port of Charleston, South Carolina. He seized every vessel entering or leaving the harbor and took several prominent citizens prisoner. His demand? It wasn't gold or silver. It was a chest of expensive medicines for his crew, who were suffering from various diseases. He threatened to behead every hostage and burn the city to the ground if his demands weren't met. The city complied, terrified of what the devil on the seas would do if provoked. 4. He shot his own first mate just to remind the crew who was boss. Blackbeard's cruelty wasn't just reserved for his enemies. He was just as brutal to his own men. During a late-night drinking session, he reportedly blew out a candle, drew 2 pistols, and fired them under the table. One bullet struck his first mate, Israel Hands, in the knee, crippling him for life. When asked why he did it, Blackbeard simply replied that if he didn't kill one of them now and then, they'd forget who he was. He ruled through pure, unpredictable terror. 5. He turned his ship into a floating fortress of death. Blackbeard's flagship, the Queen Anne's Revan, was originally a French slave ship. He retrofitted it with 40 cannons, making it one of the most powerful vessels in the Atlantic. He used the ship to hunt down much larger naval vessels, outgunning them and then boarding them with his demonic crew. The ship itself became a symbol of doom. If you saw those black sails on the horizon, you knew your life was likely over. 6. He engaged in hell contests in the ship's hold. To test the toughness of his crew and himself, Blackbeard would reportedly lock his men in the ship's hold, close all the hatches, and light pots of brimstone or sulfur. They would sit in the suffocating, toxic smoke to see who could endure the hellfire the longest. Blackbeard, of course, was always the last one to leave, emerging from the hold coughing and laughing while his men gasped for air on the deck. 7. He had a devilish appetite for marriage. Legend says Blackbeard had as many as 14 wives throughout his travels. His most famous marriage was to a 16-year-old girl in North Carolina. According to some accounts, after the wedding night, he would allow his crew to abuse his wives while he watched.
Whether this was true or part of the dark propaganda he encouraged, it added to the image of a man who had completely abandoned human morality. 8. He was nearly impossible to kill. Blackbeard's final stand in 1718 was a bloodbath. During a battle with Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy, Blackbeard fought like a man possessed. It took 5 bullet wounds and 20 severe cutlass slashes to finally bring him down. Even as he was being cut to pieces, he continued to fight, reloading his pistol and swinging his sword until the very moment his life left his body. He died as he lived, in a whirlwind of violence. 9. His headless body supposedly swam around his ship. After he was finally killed, Maynard had Blackbeard headed and hung his head from the bowsprit of his ship as a trophy. According to the terrified sailors who witnessed the aftermath, when Blackbeard's headless torso was thrown overboard, it didn't sink. Legend says the body swam around the ship 3 times, some say 7, before finally disappearing into the dark water. 10. He left a buried treasure that was never meant to be found. Unlike the movies, most pirates didn't bury their treasure, but Blackbeard claimed he did. Before his death, he was asked if anyone knew where his gold was hidden. He replied, "Only I and the devil know the existence of my treasure, and the one who lives the longest shall have it all." To this day, people search for his lost loot, but many believe the treasure was just one last psychological trap, a way to keep men obsessed with his ghost long after he was gone. Blackbeard wasn't just a pirate, he was a performance artist of the macabre. He knew that in a world of law and order, the man who acts like a monster becomes a king. He died over 300 years ago, but the smoke from his beard still lingers in our nightmares. Which of these facts do you find the most disturbing? Was he a genius of psychology or just a bloodthirsty madman? Let us know in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest figures.